Hi, this is Becky Nunn. I'm at Beadaholique in the studio shooting videos today, and this episode I'm going to show you how you can use excess little bits of your almost ready to harden resin, how you can pour it out onto a flat surface, and then once this is cured, you can cut the resin and create fun little jewelry pieces like we're seeing here. I have a little bit of excess resin from a project that I just finished up, and so before this gets too hard, I'm going to take the resin and just place it on a piece of plastic. I'm just using a Ziploc bag here, but I've also used like non-stick cooking sheets, and it just provided a really fun additional texture to the piece. This resin is super thick. It'd be ideal if it wasn't quite as thick, but you can see that what you're wanting to do is just utilize every little bit of resin that you have and finding a usage for it. So I'm putting it on pretty thin, and I just have it on my plastic, and then I'll let that cure. 12 hours is like the ideal time that the resin is still somewhat malleable and it's easy to cut. And we're going to set that aside, and then you'll be ready to peel that off of the plastic, and it'll be like little pieces like you're seeing here. These have been cured a lot longer than 12 hours, and they have stopped to, they're not as malleable as they were at 12 hours. They're a lot harder because it continues to cure over time, so it'll be a lot more brittle. But ideally is around 12 hours. It's very soft, and you can use a punch, like a leather hole punch, 2 punch holes into it, or scissors to cut it with. The next thing that we're going to want to do is create a piece that you have a backing on. So I've already cut up a couple of pieces just with a pair of scissors, just cutting just some abstract pieces and then just fitting them into the bezel until I got like a pattern that I liked or a look that I liked. So the next step is going to be putting a piece of plastic on to the back. A piece of packing tape will allow us to put resin in that piece and give it a solid back for the resin to cure. So you just go ahead and take off a piece of packing tape. And depending, in this particular design, I'm not going to have a lot of surface area show through. But if you did have a piece like this one where there was a lot of surface area that was showing through, you want to be mindful of the packing tape. This packing tape has a really translucent back, but sometimes there can be glue marks in the tape, and that will show up on the back of your piece. So lay your piece down, press your bezel. I'm using an open frame pendant here, and then just trim away your excess. This makes it so it's a little bit, you have less of a risk of this attaching onto your shirt sleeve or your hand, and it just makes it much more manageable on your work surface. So now I have my piece that I went ahead and attached onto the paper back, and I like to use a card underneath my piece. It just makes it easy for me to transport this around without having to touch it, and also I can turn it around to see the different angles of how that looks. Then you have all of your pieces lined up, and you'll want to mix up a batch of 2-part resin that you're going to pour into the base of it first, and then you're going to place your pieces into the bezel. The next step is going to use your 2-part resin that you've already mixed up. We just mixed up a nice fresh batch. You'll only need a tiny bit, so you want to make sure that you have plenty of projects to do, and you're going to pour it into the base, just a tiny amount, but it just depends on what project style you're doing. Like here's some examples. This is similar to what I'm creating right now, so I'm just going to pour a little bit into the base. On a project like this, I poured a little bit into the base. These were all holes that I punched using a leather punching tool. I use the largest size on the setting, and you just punch the resin, and then the little round circles came up through this part, and then I just laid it down into a design onto the piece, and then poured a little bit of resin underneath it, and then just went in and agitated it to make sure that all of those little circles were fully adhered down into the base, so there wasn't any air pockets in there. But let me show you how I'm going to do this one. So for this, I have a tiny little stir stick, and I'm just going to drizzle a tiny bit of resin into the base of this piece, just to kind of give it a nice solid place for the cut up resin pieces to adhere to. So just put a little bit right into the center, and then you can use a toothpick to go in there and move that resin to the edges. So I'm just giving it an overall solid back. And see how I have that all on the base. Now these are pieces, they almost look like little shards of glass that I've already adhered, that I've already cut up, and I already double checked that they fit well inside of my little piece. And now I'm just laying them down into the base. I'm turning this one over on its side. And it's okay if that resin gets in between there. See how I did that? And I think I have enough. This one has an extra little bit of green color in there. And then my last piece. Pretty fun, huh? So then you're gonna let that sit. And if you didn't like that design, you are welcome to, take these out. Maybe you didn't like this right here. Maybe you wanted, but I did a lot of that design work and those design selections before I poured that resin in. Here's an example. This is the exact same piece. The little pieces of resin were cut even higher in height than these pieces, so it's protruding outside, but it really does look like cut up or sea glass. Here's the back part. So once this piece is cured, here's an example of almost the exact same technique with more of a purple color of resin. Once this piece is cured, you'll just peel off the back, the tape off the back like this. And then you can either use the packing tape from that back to remove that excess stickies. There's not a lot on this, but if you have any excess stickiness, the tape from the actual piece, you can just use your packing tape to remove that extra. You can see it right here. It's the extra little bits of stickies from the tape. If that doesn't remove it, you can also use a product called Goo Gone and just put a couple drops on the back of that and use a stir stick to kind of scrape at that, and it'll remove the pieces. And then you'll have these great little pieces like this that you're seeing. You can also use them inside of rings and put resin over the top of them if you'd like to. Like for example, here's some pieces where the rings, these are pieces that Cheryl made where she did this exact technique where she cut little pieces of resin, put them down into the base, and then poured clear resin over the top of them to create a fun look like this. So it doesn't have to be done just inside of an open back. You can use them for any kind of project, kind of creating a mosaic-like look using excess bits of resin. This is Becky Nunn for Beadaholique, showing you how you can create this fun look using excess resin that you might have thrown out and making a piece of beautiful wearable art.